Um, I think I'm ready to go. Can I get a show of hands if you're listening to me? Just so, hey, cool. All right, now I know who I'm talking to. Nice to meet you all. My name is Dylan Coiro. I'll be presenting today in English. I come from San Diego in the United States. I work at Darktrace, where I started not too long ago as a generalist. So I worked across security across all domains. I got to work on email security, cloud, network, endpoint security. And my background, I studied mechanical engineering and math in university. And so I'll probably talk about both of those. First, the math is why I wanted to work at Darktrace, because we're a leader in AI cybersecurity, and I read about the methodology, and that made me excited about all of the products, whatever domain or coverage area we're talking about. But the mechanical engineering is why I wanted to work on OT, and that's what I'll be talking about today. I intended this presentation to be a direct follow-up to the keynote earlier that Margaret gave. And I want to talk about OT security, what that means, how we approach it, and how you can lead your business to AI maturity in OT cybersecurity. And so briefly, this may be redundant, but I just like to make sure that we're all having the same conversation. And I want to define OT cybersecurity. And there's a few terms here. So OT, ICS, and CPS. OT is operational technology, very broad. CPS is cyber physical systems. That's a term that Gartner has started using. And I really like it because it's also broad. It's where cyber touches the physical world, right? So not just limited to industrial control systems. And industrial control systems are very specifically, industrial applications, production of things like power, water treatment, petroleum exploration and production, transportation, right? Manufacturing, mining. These are industrial applications, the types of businesses that I just get excited to work with because I like machines, I like physical processes and learning about those and just getting the opportunity at work to work with these types of businesses. And so as you can imagine, if you're an OT asset owner, these functions are what keep your business going, right? If you own ICS, if you're manufacturing or producing power or treating water, these are the primary functions of your business. And so as cybersecurity professionals, we're concerned about these aspects of our infrastructure being a target, right? If somebody takes down HR, things continue to operate. But if you're a mining company and somebody takes down your mining operations, well, you're not making any money. And so at the very least, it's a profitability concern. And at the most, it's a safety hazard, right? These are physical systems that can cause physical hazards. And so these are some of the reasons why I wanted to get into this space. Another reason is that I realized there's a huge need for cybersecurity in OT. When I talk to folks about email security or network or cloud security, there's many solutions in the stack. It's competitive. There's a lot of products and services already in this space. But OT security is really an increasing topic recently. More and more businesses are detecting attacks targeting OT, and it's costing, this is just manufacturing, costing a huge amount of money in the market. So I identified, working with clients in this space, that there's a real need and a lack of competitive solutions, right? Folks would tell me, I don't know what's on my network. I would not know if somebody walked into my factory and plugged in a new machine, right? And when I hear things like that, I think, okay, these people need help, right? They need a solution that's going to tell them what's going on in their industrial environment. And so we've seen in the news, it all really began, I think, with Stuxnet in the early 2000s. When the threat to OT has become not just a physical threat but a cyber threat, and we've seen more and more examples of this in the news over the last decade or couple of decades. And a real driver of this threat is that IT and OT are converging. They're coming together, right? And so go back 20, 30, 40 years, and power plants and factories were not connected to the internet, right? And that was on purpose. That's a security measure, right? Keeping your OT systems separate from the internet it makes it more difficult to exploit or attack remotely. But now we have more and more OT systems are connected to IT systems, which are connected to the internet. They can be accessed and exploited remotely, right? So the need for cybersecurity and OT is only increasing, and the convergence of IT and OT seems to be increasing continuously because while there are security challenges when these systems converge, there are actually many great reasons to connect your industrial control systems to your enterprise systems, right? To inform business decisions. People need to work from home. They want to manage or monitor the environment remotely. And so for a lot of business and operational reasons, this continues, and that just means that we have more work to do. And so this is, I tried not to focus on the product specifically, but this is how we think about an IT and OT network being connected, right? And not only are they connected to each other, but they're connected to your email environment. All of your SaaS applications are likely used on IT enterprise systems, right? And these email and SaaS applications are where we think about most threats coming into an environment, right? I think like 94% of threats come in via the inbox. And so we're most concerned as probabilistic thinkers about threats coming in via email, right? And then compromising IT systems. You don't know who's going to click on what or download what on the IT enterprise side, right? And then once there's compromise of an IT system, now we have lateral movement from IT over to OT. And so monitoring these systems together makes a lot of sense because the threat is unlikely to walk in the door of the factory. It can, but more likely it comes in via email, right? Or off of the internet. And so there are some specific challenges. While these environments are converged and very much connected, there's some specific challenges in OT cybersecurity that I found are different from securing an IT environment. And the first one is visibility. I already mentioned I work with OT asset owners who tell me I would not know if somebody entered my facility and plugged in a new device onto my network. To me, that's scary, right? Especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure like power and water systems, transportation, mining, heavy equipment. If somebody wants to walk in the door, plug in a new computer, and start making changes on industrial control systems, I've spoken to real people that tell me I would have no way of knowing, right? So visibility is a huge challenge. And you can see from the statistics, very few organizations have achieved complete visibility into the OT environment. Whereas I think cloud makes things complicated, but I think a lot of people would say that they've achieved 100% visibility into their IT infrastructure. But OT remains kind of a dark black box, right? And then vulnerability. An interesting reality of industrial control systems and other OT devices is I mentioned historically OT is separate from IT. These devices were not designed historically to be very cyber secure. They're designed to operate continuously for a long period of time, but they're not designed to be resilient to the cyber threat. And so as we start to consider the cyber risk facing OT, we realize that there's a large number of vulnerabilities, and it's hard to know what to do with those vulnerabilities, right? If you have 1,000 vulnerabilities affecting your devices, Margaret talked about 40,000 CVEs were published last year. If 1,000 of the CVEs that are published affect your infrastructure, what do we patch first? How do we address that risk? So that's a very real challenge, especially when uptime, right, continuous operation is a driving priority in OT. If you're a mining company, you want to keep mining. If you generate power, you want to keep the lights on, right? So you don't want to stop so that you can patch your devices. So putting a plan in place to manage vulnerability is a challenge, a very real challenge in OT. And then threat detection, I think of it as very sophisticated visibility, and this is where we start to get into the AI, and how AI can help us achieve security in OT. Because you don't just want to see into the environment. There may be millions or hundreds of millions of events in a network environment, and you only want to know about the events that are interesting, important, dangerous, risky, right? And so threat detection, once you turn the lights on, now we need some kind of filter, right? So that we're only made aware of the events that are important to us as security professionals. And so to achieve these things, to help folks achieve, address those challenges, these are some of the primary functions that I see folks asking for, right? People want to know what they have, right? How many devices are in my factory, and if a new device gets added, will I know about that, or do I have to go walk around the factory, right? Managing risk, right? What could happen tomorrow, and what could I do about it today to prevent it from happening? And then if something happens today, will I be made aware? How do I conduct an investigation, right? What's my next step? And then if I've determined that this is actually very bad, what do I do about it? How do I stop it quickly before more harm is done? And then putting a plan in place so that, once you have the monitoring there, how do we actually put a plan on paper or even, digitalize it so that if something happens next week, I know what I'm doing, you know what you're doing, everybody has their job and their roles, right? And so there's Margaret talked about the AI maturity model this morning, a few hours ago in the keynote. There's another maturity model of sorts. This Gartner, who publishes all the Magic Quadrant and industry reviews of like products and services, they have an OT, they call it cyber physical system life cycle. And this is how a business can progress from no OT cybersecurity to, best in class, right? And the first phase, and congratulations, everybody in this room is a part of phase 1, because this is just recognizing there's a problem. So even if you've never thought about this before, if you're listening to me, you are part of 60% of organizations that realize that we should be talking about OT cybersecurity, right? But that comes before any action steps. And then phase 2, 3, and 4, 30% of organizations are here beginning to take action, but this really represents, lagging behind what we do in IT cybersecurity, where the approach is much more sophisticated and built out over years and decades, right? But this looks like seeing inside your environment, recognizing risk before something bad happens, and then having the ability to detect things that are going wrong and chase them around, right? Oh, that's broken, right? We have to chase things, putting out fires as they pop up. And then 10% of organizations fall into either phase 5 or phase 6, which is starting to align your OT security strategy with your IT security strategy, and then actually hardening your defenses proactively, right? You've gone through phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now you have actionable insight into, okay, what could happen tomorrow and what can I do today to fix it? Now you're actually integrating this into your plan. Now, we're starting to talk about AI, right? And how AI can enable organizations to progress from left to right here. And in the middle, AI can save us time and money, right? It can aggregate and summarize things, make them easy to read and interact with. It can help us prioritize risk before anything happens and identify, risky activity, unusual activity as that activity unfolds within the environment. So AI can save us time and money. But here AI becomes really essential, right? If you want to get to the cutting edge of cybersecurity and the most intelligent detection algorithms and risk analysis and proactive preparation for events before they occur by, predictive modeling, this is where AI becomes fundamental to your strategy. And so you have to kind of move from left to right in order to, realize the value of AI. You don't need to go spend money on AI today if you're just starting to look, right? We're still looking. And so I want to go back to the slide that I had before. Phase 1 is just awareness, right? You start realizing, I need to know what I have. Phase 2 and 3, now we take that visibility to the next level and we're actually looking at, oh wow, something bad could happen. Like I have a vulnerability that is unpatched and there's a known exploit today. And so I actually need to maybe stop operations, request some scheduled downtime to begin patching. And then phase 4 is threat detection allows you to firefight, right? You'll know, oh, somebody just plugged in a new machine in the production environment. Let me go down there and see what's going on, right? This is reactive. And then phase 5 and 6 is where we really kind of step up to higher order tasks, right? Not just detecting unusual activity, but realizing that maybe a new machine is reprogramming PLCs in your production environment. Well, autonomous investigation is realizing that before somebody started reprogramming those PLCs, we saw new credentials on that machine that we haven't seen before. And that's a distinct event that is connected to the unusual activity. Maybe we saw an unusual download one day before or a week before, right? So it's connecting multiple events and using that to actually go through an investigation, identify what can be done to mitigate the harm, right? And then, of course, using all of that, right? Monitoring a network, knowing what you have, knowing what the risk factors are, and knowing when something goes wrong, what to do about it, you could start to put a plan in place, right? So it's not a surprise. You're not reacting when something goes wrong. You're, acting. You've already rehearsed it. And so to do this, there are various AI techniques. Margaret earlier talked about a larger number of AI techniques, maybe that we use within our platform or just in general that are out there. And I want to differentiate between a few key categories. So supervised machine learning is a very computationally efficient way to detect what we already know, what we've already seen in the wild, right? So if we've seen this malware or this pattern of network traffic, we can easily study that, use an AI, train an AI on that, and then use that to detect it very easily. It's very efficient. But you can't detect something you've never seen before using this methodology. And then generative AI, I've literally spoken to people that think that this is the only type of AI, right? And it's great, and it's very popular now. But it's not a detection methodology. It's great for optimizing human data interaction, right? For content generation or summarization. But it's not a detection algorithm because it needs to be prompted. And so you can't just go to sleep at night and ChatGPT is not going to tell you if somebody's hacking your network. Whereas unsupervised machine learning that is continuously learning on your business data, this is what we need in order to detect deviations from normal behavioral patterns, right? So we don't need to train on attacks that we saw somewhere else. We need to train on your business so that we can understand what happens within your business on a normal day and then generate, alerts or react to deviations from normal. And so if we need to train on your business data, we need to get your business data. And we already talked about the fact that the OT network is connected to the IT network, almost in all cases. There's air gaps, there's segmentation, but usually there are shared resources and connections between IT and OT that mean that there's risk of lateral movement from IT into OT. And the IT systems are connected to your SaaS applications and your email environment, right? So in order to learn your business data, we actually need to understand what's going on in these intentionally distinct zones, right? You have the enterprise zone, you have enterprise software and servers and user systems and internet access, which are intentionally separate and segmented from your multiple plants, right? If you're a manufacturing company or a power company, electricity, or a mining company, you have multiple mines, multiple factories, multiple power plants. And these are distinct network zones, which ensures some level of security. But we can't just sit on the mainframe up top and expect to know what's going on in the plant, right? And so to kind of, now with this specialization in OT, my role is now described as an architect, and I really do have an obsession with physical network architecture. Because with IT, there's so much virtualization, and you can kind of talk about things theoretically, and you may not need to physically sit near any one person or system because things are routed centrally and there's a lot of virtualization. But in OT, if this factory is in Santiago and this one is in Lima, Peru, we're not going to see what's going on in Lima if we only sniff traffic in Santiago, right? And so with physical segmentation comes the need for additional visibility on the edge of an industrial network. And that's where, and this is, I believe, my final slide, I have made a short career for myself of emphasizing the need for visibility on the edge of industrial networks, right? Because summarizing everything, and I'm going a little bit over time, I hope that's not a huge problem. What we want to do is feed the necessary data into an AI algorithm, or lots of algorithms, to give it the information that it needs to defend your industrial infrastructure, or your OT infrastructure. And to do that, we can sit up top in the enterprise zone, right? We can sit near user systems and core services and internet traffic, but we also want to provide visibility, monitoring, risk analysis, and coordinated response on the edge of your OT network. Because if you have a power plant, a factory, the person who programs these industrial machines likely sits very close to these industrial machines, right? You don't change the speed of a turbine in Lima, Peru from a factory in Santiago, right? You do that locally. And so in order to effectively defend the threat from where it enters, how it moves laterally, and then ultimately what it targets, we need visibility that's comprehensive all the way from the enterprise, internet-facing systems, down through and to the edge of the industrial network, which is segmented both physically and logically for security. So that's a lot of what I do, and I spend a lot of time talking about the same stuff. Thank you very much for your time today, and if you have any questions or you want to discuss OT cybersecurity and AI applications in the field any further, please find me after the session. Thank you.